At the end, I was asking about the movie, and I asked them about that one particular part where everybody's talking, and they all cried out Epstein Island. And I went, oh, okay. Now I understand what we're up against.
Wow.
Epstein Island isn't the only island out there.
What I'm about to tell you, they didn't want you to hear. They tried to bury it. They mocked the man who said it. They blacklisted him from Hollywood. And when that didn't work, they pretended he never existed. But some things, once heard, can never be unheard. His name is Jim Caviezel. And for years, he's been screaming a warning into a world that refused to listen. They called him a conspiracy theorist. They called him crazy. Late-night hosts laughed at him on national television. Hosts who, looking back now, should have been taking notes instead of cracking jokes. His film Sound of Freedom didn't just expose the unthinkable, it pulled back the curtain on an industry that smiles in front of the cameras and hides monsters behind them. And the moment that film hit theaters, the same people who claimed to care about the children did everything in their power to bury it. But Caviezel didn't stop. He couldn't stop. Because what he saw, what he knows, is bigger than one movie, bigger than one island, bigger than anything most people are ready to accept. And now, he's dropping a bombshell that nobody saw coming. Jim Caviezel claims he personally begged Ellen DeGeneres, yes, that Ellen, to help save the children trapped on Epstein Island. He says he reached out to her directly, pleaded with her, asked her to use that massive platform of hers to speak up, to do something. She didn't. She stayed silent. And now we might finally understand why. Because Caviezel isn't just hinting anymore. He's naming names. He's drawing maps. He's connecting Hollywood's most powerful faces to an island the world was told to forget. Today, we're walking through every warning Jim Caviezel tried to give us. His desperate plea to Ellen, the names hidden in the shadows, and the question that should be keeping every single one of us up at night. Who else knew? And who chose to stay silent? Stay with me, because what you're about to learn changes everything.
The Ellen situation.
Yeah.
You know, people found out that Ellen was mean, and all these people came out and said, Ellen, actually. And they were like, whoa,
Yeah.
I can't believe it. And she lost everything. She fell apart, disappeared, because people found out that this character that she was portraying in a half an hour on a television show is not really who she was.
I brought this up a few years ago, and all of a sudden I was attacked by every media. Look it up. It's there.
Rewind a few years. Jim Caviezel was untouchable. He was at the absolute peak of his career, Hollywood royalty. Fame, money, prestige, A-list invitations, magazine covers. He had the dream, the thing every actor in Los Angeles claws for their entire lives. And he walked away from all of it. Think about that for a second. Most people in his position would have shut their mouth, cashed the checks, and lived comfortably for the rest of their lives. That's what Hollywood expects. That's the unspoken deal. You play along, you stay rich. But Caviezel chose a different path. He made Sound of Freedom, a film based on the real-life story of Tim Ballard, a former U.S. government agent who walked away from his career to rescue children from networks operating in Latin America and beyond. And during filming in Colombia, something happened. Caviezel and his crew witnessed something no human being should ever have to see. Children, actual children, being sold in broad daylight. Not whispered about in dark alleys, not hidden in basements, out in the open, like merchandise, like products on a shelf, like they were nothing. He said it later in an interview, and the line still haunts people who hear it. What I filmed was fiction, but what we saw was real. Let that sink in. He brought the film back to Hollywood expecting applause. He expected the industry that built him, the industry that claims to stand for justice, for children, for the voiceless, to rally behind him. He expected red carpets, awards, standing ovations. Instead, he got silence, then ridicule, then a complete blacklist. The same people who post black squares on Instagram. The same people who give speeches about protecting children. The same people who weep on award stages. They turn their backs on him overnight. Why? Why would Hollywood blacklist a man for making a movie about saving kids? Keep listening, because the answer is darker than you think.
They're created out of fear, and with something like Sound of Freedom, it specifically is looking at QAnon concepts of these child rings that are run by the high-level elites.
For some reason, the entire media is smearing this movie as a dangerous conspiracy theory. The press is saying that the star, Jim Caviezel, is a QAnon guy. And Jim plays Tim Ballard, which is strange because just a few years ago, the same media was celebrating Tim Ballard's heroics. So why is the media warning people not to see a movie about child that's based on a true story?
Major studios, streaming giants, massive distribution networks, all of them were quietly pressured. Powerful figures, names we still don't know, made phone calls, sent warnings. The message was simple and terrifying. Touch that film, and your career is over. This wasn't a rumor. This wasn't speculation. People inside the industry confirmed it. Executives who wanted to support the movie were threatened. Distributors backed out at the last minute. Promotional opportunities vanished overnight. And the mainstream media, they did something even more sinister. They smeared it. They called it QAnon propaganda. They called it right-wing fear-mongering. They called it everything except what it actually was. A movie about saving children. So ask yourself, who has that kind of power? Who can pick up a phone and make Hollywood fall in line? Who is so terrified of a film about child trafficking that they burn their own credibility to bury it? That question is the entire story.
I was not emotionally prepared for the new film Sound of Freedom. You've heard it referred to as a right-wing film, as a Christian film, as a conspiracy movie, as a QAnon film. You know, they use all the buzzwords to make this film as radioactive as possible.
Sound of Freedom, it specifically is looking at QAnon concepts of these child rings that are run by the high-level elites. Now, it's not true.
The movie highlights the very real, not conspiracy theory of human. Need I remind you of another thing that was considered a conspiracy theory up until 5 seconds ago, which was the fact that a little guy named Jeffrey Epstein had a little island where the most powerful people, the tippity top of government officials, celebrity, Hollywood, would go.
Now, why would an entire industry work this hard to bury a film about saving children? Why would the most powerful people on Earth coordinate to silence a story that should have been celebrated worldwide? Because there's something they don't want you to look at. And then the Epstein documents got unsealed, and everything changed. The public expected the usual suspects. A few politicians, a couple of shady financiers, maybe a billionaire or two. That's what the media prepared us for. That's the manageable version of a story. But what came out was something else entirely. A list of names stretching across every industry imaginable. People who attended his parties. People who flew on his private plane, the Lolita Express. People who visited his island. Names from finance, politics, royalty, science, fashion, and Hollywood. And one name stood out. One name made everyone who had been quietly following Caviezel's warnings sit up in their chair. Ellen DeGeneres. Her name appeared on that list. And not just once, repeatedly. And not in vague, throwaway mentions either. In context that made people stop scrolling. Context that made them whisper the same uncomfortable question. Wait, what did she know? Ellen DeGeneres' name surfaced in the files through a 2014 email about meeting schedules. On the surface, nothing criminal, nothing damning. But for anyone who had been listening to Jim Caviezel for years, who had heard him beg her to speak up about the kids on that island, that 2014 email wasn't nothing. It was a thread. And threads, when you pull them, unravel everything. Caviezel says he reached out to her personally, begged her, pleaded with her to use her platform, one of the biggest platforms in the entire world at that time, to say something, anything, about the children on Epstein Island. She never did. Not a tweet, not a comment, not a whisper, just silence. And then her show collapsed. The Be Kind Queen turned out to be one of the most feared bosses in Hollywood. Former employees came forward, the image cracked, the mask slipped, and Ellen disappeared from public life almost overnight. Coincidence? Maybe. But the story doesn't end there. Because there's another name in this story. A name that haunts everything we're about to discuss. A name connected to Ellen in ways that, for many people, have never been properly explained. Enhechi, August 2022, Los Angeles. Enhechi drives her car into a home at high speed. The car bursts into flames. She dies in the resulting fire. The official ruling? An accident. Case closed. Move on. But online, among researchers, journalists, and people who were paying attention, the whispers refused to die. Some pointed to En's long history of speaking openly about dark forces in Hollywood. Others noticed the timing, Her crash happened exactly when Epstein revelations were gaining serious momentum again. And then came the most chilling rumor of all. Unconfirmed reports, but persistent ones, suggested and had been quietly working on a documentary. A project allegedly titled Children of the Machine. A film that supposedly exposed the child trafficking networks running underneath Hollywood. Did it exist? Was it real? Was she really making it? We may never know. Every trace of that project has been scrubbed or buried. But here's what we do know. And Hetchy spent years trying to process what she had experienced during her time with Ellen. She said in multiple interviews that the things she witnessed were too disturbing to speak aloud. Read that line again. Too disturbing to speak aloud. And then, suddenly, she was gone. Sources close to and unnamed, unverified, but persistent, have whispered for years that her death was not an accident. That she knew too much. That she was preparing to speak. And that someone made absolutely sure she never got the chance. Is there proof? No. There may never be. That's the entire point of how these things work. But in a story filled with powerful people, sealed documents, blacked out names, and unexplained deaths, and Hetchy's name lingers like a question no one in Hollywood wants to answer. And here's the worst part. Ellen wasn't the only one. Oprah Winfrey. Her name appeared in the Epstein files over 5 separate times. In deposition transcripts, Oprah testified that she barely knew Epstein. Maybe that's true. Maybe it's not. But her connections to other deeply controversial figures have raised eyebrows for years. Take John of God, a so-called Brazilian spiritual healer who Oprah praised on her show, promoted to millions of viewers, and personally vouched for. She called him gifted. She called him special. She gave him the kind of global endorsement money can't buy. That same man was later convicted of horrific crimes against women and girls and sentenced to nearly 400 years in prison. 400 years. And Oprah platformed him. Oprah promoted him. Oprah believed him.
This is an interview I wasn't sure would ever happen. One of the most famous spiritual healers in the world rarely talks to anyone on camera. John of God agreed to sit down with me under a mango tree on the grounds of the casa. A group of his patients gathered to watch. John of God speaks only Portuguese, so Heather Cumming helped translate. Ready, guys? You describe yourself as a spiritual medium. What does that mean, a medium?
In 2007, Oprah opened a school for underprivileged girls in South Africa, a project she called her life's greatest legacy. The cameras loved it. The headlines glowed. But then the reality leaked out. A dormitory matron at that school was accused of abusing the very girls Oprah claimed to be protecting. Oprah handled it the way only Oprah can, publicly, controlled on her terms. She testified before Congress. She gave the right speeches. She made the right faces. And then the entire scandal got quietly settled, buried, forgotten by the mainstream press. The girls, their stories were never fully told.
The trial of a former dormitory matron charged with 6 students at Oprah Winfrey School for Girls in South Africa is resuming. Prosecutors say former dorm matron Tina Virginia Makopo tried to kiss and fondle the girls. She's also accused of kicking and hitting some of them. Makopo pleaded innocent to 14 charges of indecent assault and criminal injury in South Africa. Meanwhile, in Philadelphia, the ex-headmistress of the $40 million school is suing Winfrey for defamation. The suit claims someone would conclude from Winfrey's comments that the school employee knew of the alleged and was actively involved in covering it up.
I was, needless to say, devastated and really shaken to my core.
Winfrey said she was disappointed in the former headmistress. The TV talk show host also made comments about students who felt there was an atmosphere of repression at the school.
And it's not just Epstein. It's not just John of God. It's not just the school. Oprah was photographed with Harvey Weinstein for years. Decades, actually. She attended his parties. She smiled for his cameras. She walked his red carpets. She praised him in public, and she said absolutely nothing, not one word, until the rest of the world had already exposed him. She only spoke when it was safe to speak, when the danger was gone, when the cameras demanded it. Jim Caviezel has a very specific word for figures like Oprah. He calls them gatekeepers, people who lend their influence, their credibility, and their massive platforms to systems that quietly exploit the vulnerable, whether they fully realize it or not. Now, let me be clear. None of this is proof of any crime. Ellen DeGeneres has never been charged with anything. Oprah Winfrey has never been accused of committing crimes. We are not making accusations. We are reporting connections. But the connections exist. The patterns exist. The questions exist. And the silence, the deafening, deliberate silence from the most powerful voices in media, speaks louder than any denial they could ever issue. Now let's talk about the man at the center of all of it. Jeffrey Epstein. August 2019. He dies in federal custody. The official ruling? Suicide. Done. Move on. Don't ask questions. But for millions of people watching, that word has never sat right. Because the story is full of holes a child could see through. The cameras outside his cell conveniently malfunctioned that night. Both of them, at the exact same time. What are the odds? The guards assigned to watch him 24/7 conveniently fell asleep. Both of them, on the most important inmate in the entire federal prison system. The investigation? Rushed. Closed faster than a celebrity divorce. The surveillance footage that would have shown us exactly what happened? Conveniently lost. Unavailable. Gone. And with Jeffrey Epstein's death, the public lost the only chance we ever had to hear directly from the man at the center of the largest trafficking network in modern history. Since then, documents have trickled out. Slowly, drop by drop, names have surfaced. But the full truth, the complete, unredacted picture of who knew what, who went where, who participated in what, remains buried under mountains of legal protection and media silence. Every release is redacted. Every file is incomplete. Every name comes with a black bar. And the people whose names do appear in those files, they haven't disappeared. They haven't been arrested. They haven't even been seriously questioned. They're still here, still working, still smiling on red carpets, still accepting awards, still being celebrated. The machinery of protection, the money, the lawyers, the media connections, the publicists, the political favors, keeps them completely safe, untouchable, above the law, while the rest of us wait for an accountability that, deep down, we all know is never coming. Jim Caviezel has been screaming about this for years. He doesn't see a scandal. He doesn't see a few bad apples. He sees a system, a network so deeply embedded in our institutions that exposing it feels almost impossible. He's been blacklisted, mocked, dismissed, called crazy, but he refuses to shut up, and he says something is coming. He calls it a divine reckoning, a moment when the walls finally fall, when the truth can no longer be contained. And the numbers behind his warning, they will stop you cold. Over 300,000 children under the age of 18 have gone missing in the United States alone. Let that hit you. That's not a statistic on a screen. That's a stadium full of children. An entire stadium. Empty seats where kids used to be. Approximately 85,000 children who crossed the southern U.S. border have disappeared without a single trace. Vanished. Erased. Into a system that was supposedly built to protect them. Where did they go? Who took them? Why isn't this the biggest story on Earth every single day? Despite the threats, despite the consequences, despite watching people around them fall silent or fall dead, whistleblowers keep coming forward. They speak at unimaginable personal cost. They know what happened to the ones who came before them. They know the risks. They speak anyway, because staying silent is worse than dying. And Hetchy is gone. Car crash. 2022. Circumstances still unexplained for those who actually look at the evidence. Those closest to her believe she knew things, had seen things, was preparing to speak. And then she wasn't there anymore. Epstein is gone. And with him died the full extent of what he knew. Conveniently. Completely. Permanently. The secrecy continues. The protection of elites continues. The system that allowed Jeffrey Epstein to operate freely for decades continues to function exactly the way it was designed to function. But the children are still waiting. The survivors are still speaking. The truth is still trying, fighting, to break through the noise. Jim Caviezel says a reckoning is coming, that there will be an event, a moment, a breaking point, when the walls fall and the truth can no longer be hidden. He points to whistleblowers preparing to speak, to sealed documents about to be released, to a shift he says he can feel beneath the surface. Is he right? Is this finally the moment? Or is this just another story that will be quietly buried? Another set of names that will stay redacted forever? Another empty promise that accountability is just around the corner until the news cycle moves on and we all forget? The island is still there. The files are still sealed. The powerful are still protected, but the questions will never go away. So tell me, what do you think is really going on here? Do you believe Jim Caviezel? Do you think Ellen knew more than she's saying? Wasn't Hetchy silenced? Drop your honest thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one. If this video opened your eyes even a little bit, hit that subscribe button, because the next one is going to hit even harder. Till next time,